Just wanted you to feel in charge.
I feel in charge.
Thanks.
Talking a little bit about dark mode. So this is a good low contrast option that's easier to look at in low light. So it naturally has more contrast because you have a super dark background and you lay white text over top of it. Definitely more popular now that dark and light mode are accessible on browsers and accessible to developers.
This used to be a really popular one, and now you see a lot more of it these days. Again, these are like 10 web design styles that we're starting to see kind of on the rise. Some of these have been around for a while, but this is what we're seeing in 2025. So, yeah.
We talked about accessibility earlier. This is a good accessibility option because it gives you that high contrast you're looking for in an ADA audit. And then Drew talked about it, dark mode. It lends itself well because if you have a black or white site or you have a monochromatic site like Lemonade, it allows you to kind of flip between those.
Out of curiosity, who here prefers dark mode on their apps?
Oh my goodness.
That's a good amount of people, yeah. That was like 40% of people.
I didn't realize I was in the minority on this.
You're not a fan?
I'm a light mode person all the way.
I actually prefer that as well. I usually don't do dark mode, but sometimes
I think we're right then. I think we're right.
That's what I was getting at.
Okay. Yeah. We're agreed. I need to be on the top of every page. Light mode.
Check. That makes sense.
We're done.
Yeah. Minimalist. Minimalist is the next one. So you kind of saw this too in that Lemonade design that we saw there. It's just really clean, really minimal. I actually really love this one just because of that. It doesn't feel like too oppressive or overwhelming. That's one of the reasons I like that Lemonade design. And it's just a really like simple, streamlined experience. And you can put a lot of emphasis. Think about when you put a button in there or when you put an image in there, it puts a lot of emphasis on it. And really like that about it. Plus, an added benefit is the load times are pretty minimal.
Yeah, there's a simplicity there.
I got it.
Non-traditional scroll. So we see a lot more of this where you'd go to scroll vertically down the page and then you have a horizontal scroll that takes its place. It creates kind of a unexpected experience, but it can be really fun if you have like more of a playful brand. That can be an interesting way to approach that. It is disruptive, like we said, in a good way. It's unexpected. Some of those unexpected experiences are really kind of memorable to the user, which is part of what you're trying to accomplish with the website, is making it memorable.
I think we saw this one a little bit in that 25 website where you scroll down and then it kind of stopped scrolling and it had an animation and then it continued scrolling. So we think you have to be careful with this, but it can lend to a cool experience. And that cool factor is important, but not at the cost of usability. I remember years ago, probably 20 years ago, I was working at a company and we helped put together a website for an organization here in town. And they wanted a website and you go to it and all it was just a search box and nothing else. No content, no main navigation, everything. So the simplicity was pretty cool, but it was just a search box. I mean, so this was like, how long did I say 20 years ago? Jeez, it's probably longer than that. I'm giving away my age, but so the idea was the user just had to search for what they wanted on their website. 20 years ago, search wasn't as smart as it is today. So it was like a horrible experience. There's probably like 20 terms that worked for the search and nothing else worked. So that's an example of trying to be too creative where it's at the cost of the user experience. Microanimations are the next one. We talked a little bit about this, but when you have those subtle animations that aren't too distracting, it doesn't take away from the content, it's kind of playful, it's kind of fun, it's interesting, that can be a really positive experience. And if you can have those animations, again, that kind of point you down the website or move towards the content, move the eye towards the content, that can be really effective. And just little movement and animations is a great way to get that cool factor into your website.
One last thing with the microanimations is if you have too many of these, it is going to bog down page load because there is code that is associated with those animations. So making sure you're not overdoing it. I think that's where the subtlety comes in there. Is like, how small can these be? How infrequent can they be?
Yep.
Multi-layered navigation. This is another thing I am known for better or for worse in the office, of wanting these complex navigations. They're really complex, but they're also super interactive. So you can kind of see in this example, as you hover over an element in the nav, you then have a second kind of nav to go through and hover over and change what you can see. So it allows you to take a lot of content and make it accessible in the navigation. And it's good if you have multiple products or services, but it can be, or it is overkill if you have a very simple content architecture. If you don't have that much content on the site, this doesn't make sense. If you have thousands of pages, it's more of a consideration.
Storytelling design. So this is kind of cool and something we're seeing a little more, but it's like, instead of just giving declarative statements and things like that, it's actually telling a bit of a story as one scrolls or one clicks through a website. And if you do it right, it can keep people on the site and it can keep them interested. It's really a fine art, and often this can be enhanced with images, with illustrations, and things like that. So it's kind of, I mean, we could talk forever about this one, but it's interesting and it's something that we're seeing on the rise.
And then integrated video. So video is one of the most highly engaging mediums that you have access to as a digital marketer. So it is very tempting and to leverage it on your homepage or on any page on the site. It is very useful as in the background or the foreground. It's good for background imagery or information giving if it's a YouTube video. There's so many use cases for it, and we see it more and more often, especially if you go to a homepage as like background to the hero section. The one thing that it does well is it kind of creates motion naturally. It can be distracting. So like from a contrast standpoint, you'll notice with Absolute Group, we have a very dark overlay on that so that then the text is really readable. If we didn't have that, you wouldn't know that text was there, and it makes it harder to engage with the page. And then, being careful with text from a contrast standpoint.
Oversized headings. Okay, so this is one we saw with the 25 example earlier, and this is something that we do on Blue Compass too. We're a big fan of this. It almost becomes an art element itself, those large words, but it also conveys that real simple point. This is something that Apple does a lot on their website, and I think they do it really well. And so it's just useful to grab attention, but the thing is, this can also have some SEO benefit if you use font. And search engines can see this, which is kind of nice. But you have to be careful that it doesn't take up too much space and people aren't scrolling a little too much.
All right, and then illustrated design. Again, something that has continued to rise in popularity. Lemonade was a good example of this. It can match a lot of styles. So if you have a more casual like app that you're promoting, illustration can make a lot of sense. If you're in a highly professional case like Palmer Group here, it can still make a lot of sense because it's so flexible and you don't have to wait for a photographer to show up and get those images edited. You have a lot more control over file size and compression, so it's really popular. And generating those images and getting them in the right place at the right time and in the right size is much simpler than if you're waiting for photography.
Yeah, this is, Palmer Group's website is really fantastic, if I do say so myself. When you scroll down, there's like some animation throughout. It's really fantastic. Who did this website?
That would be Blue Compass.
Oh, I told you not to be too promotional.
And then mobile first design. So it is ideal for mobile oriented business. We have the Des Moines Airport here as an example where that experience of I'm going to the airport, I need to check out if my flight's on time, I need to check in and whatever else you need to do, that is it needs a mobile first approach, and it needs to make a lot of sense on mobile. But it does require a very different approach to the design because you're scaling out from the mobile device rather than scaling down to the mobile device.